in the windswept lands of Iceland, hidden beneath moss-covered stones and deep within ancient lava fields, there are whispers of the Huldufolk, the hidden people. Their stories have drifted through the mists of Icelandic folklore, mysterious beings who live alongside us, unseen, guarding the wild places of the earth. Some say they are protectors, others warn they are vengeful if disturbed. In this episode, we will explore 3 chilling encounters, real stories from those who claim to have met the Huldufolk face to face. From strange voices beneath the stones, to ghostly visitors in the night, each tale blurs the line between myth and reality. And finally, we will uncover the ancient beliefs on how you, too, might find yourself standing closer to the hidden people than you ever expected. But before we step into these personal accounts, let's go back to the roots of the legend itself. Because to understand the hidden people, you must first understand the land they call home. The Huldufolk, or hidden people, are a key part of Icelandic folklore. The origins of the Huldufolk legend are deeply rooted in Norse mythology and early Icelandic settlement. When the Norse settlers arrived in Iceland in the 9th century, they brought with them beliefs in land spirits and supernatural beings. Over time, these older Norse spirits merged with local Icelandic nature worship and the harsh, isolated landscapes of the island. One of the oldest explanations comes from a Christianized version of the legend. According to Icelandic folklore, when God visited Eve, the mother of mankind, she was ashamed that not all of her children were clean, and so she hid some of them. When God discovered this, he declared that those hidden children would remain hidden from humankind forever, thus becoming the Huldufolk. Others suggest that the legend grew from the Icelanders' deep respect and fear of nature itself. The barren lava fields, eerie rock formations, and ever-changing weather-inspired stories of hidden beings living in and protecting the land. Over centuries, these stories evolved into the belief in the Huldufolk, human-like but ethereal beings who live invisibly alongside people, emerging only when they choose to be seen. For centuries, Icelanders have shown reverence toward certain stones and landscapes, fearing the wrath or seeking the favor of the Huldufolk. These stories are deeply rooted in Iceland's culture and continue to shape local beliefs and traditions today. In 2013, the construction of a road through the Galgurán lava field sparked public protests and national debate. Many believed the project would disturb a sacred rock linked to the Huldufolk, Iceland's hidden people. Environmentalists, locals, and folklore believers joined forces to stop the construction. The controversy escalated when activists, including a well-known seer, refused to comply with police orders and were fined. Their defiance led the case all the way to the Icelandic Supreme Court, symbolizing a rare collision between ancient folklore and modern law. The road was eventually completed, but not before the sacred rock was respectfully relocated. The Bell Beyond the Rocks. In 2022, NRK, Norway's national public service broadcaster, interviewed Hermundur, an Icelandic man who shared an extraordinary childhood experience. What began as innocent play near a stone mound in rural Iceland turned into something far stranger, blurring the line between folklore and reality. In the quiet outskirts of Vergeri, a small Icelandic town cradled by mountains and steam vents, young Hermundur lived with his family. Their house sat at the edge of the village, near a rugged stone mound that rose like a scar from the earth. It was the kind of place adults passed by without a second glance, but to a curious 4-year-old boy, it was an invitation. One chilly afternoon, as the wind rustled through the sparse birch trees, Hermundur heard something faint, the gentle tinkling of a bell. It came from the stone mound. Drawn by the sound, he wandered toward it, peeking between the rocks until he saw them, children, dressed all in white, stepping gracefully from what looked like a small opening in the mound. Their skin was pale, and their hair shimmered like silver threads under the soft Icelandic light. They smiled at Hermunder, and without hesitation, he joined them. They played among the stones, finding beetles beneath leaves, collecting berries, and laughing in a way that made the whole world seem warmer. What surprised Hermunder the most wasn't their sudden appearance, but how they spoke, not with words, but with thoughts. Their feelings and ideas filled his mind effortlessly, as though they shared a secret language without sound. The encounters continued over the next few weeks. Each time, the bell would call him. Each time, the children in white would emerge from the hidden crevice. They shared games, stories, and quiet moments in the shade of the stone mound. For young Hermunder, this was simply how the world worked. The mysterious children were as real to him as the moss-covered stones and the wind-chilled streams nearby. But then, after the fourth visit, everything changed. His family packed up and moved to the other side of Iceland, leaving behind the familiar house and the enchanted stone mound. The bell never rang again, and the children in white never returned. Years passed. Hermunder grew older, and memories of those magical afternoons settled into the dusty corners of his mind, half forgotten but never gone. It wasn't until one quiet evening, sitting with his mother, that the memory surfaced. Casually, he mentioned the children he used to play with near the stone mound, expecting her to smile at the nostalgia. Instead, her face paled. "What are you talking about?" she asked, furrowing her brow. "There were no other children there. You always played alone." The words struck Hermunder like a winter gust. He felt his breath catch. How could that be? He remembered the games, the laughter, the touch of small hands holding his as they ran between the rocks. Perhaps, he thought, it was the imagination of a lonely child. Perhaps they were only figments of a young mind conjuring friends out of solitude. But deep down, Hermunder wasn't convinced. The clarity of the memories, the way their voices filled his mind without sound, it felt too vivid, too tangible to dismiss as fantasy. For years after, he wrestled with the truth. Were they Huldufolk, the hidden people of Icelandic folklore? Spirits bound to nature, slipping between the cracks of the visible world? Or were they simply imaginary companions born from the fertile imagination of a 4-year-old? Decades passed. The memory remained, neither fading nor fully explained. But then, in the year 2000, something even stranger happened. Hermunder, now a grown man, sat quietly on a bench outside his apartment, watching the sun sink behind the imposing volcano Snæfellsjökull. The air was crisp, the colors in the sky blending orange and violet. Without warning, someone appeared beside him, a man in jeans and a plain t-shirt, looking utterly ordinary. But when Hermunder turned to greet him, there were no words. The stranger's voice echoed directly inside his mind, just as the children's had all those years ago. "Where did you come from?" Hermunder asked silently. From the other side came the calm reply. Hermunder hesitated. "Why do you look like an ordinary man?" The stranger smiled. "We evolve, just like everything else. Nothing stays the same." Before Hermunder could ask more, the man was gone, as if swallowed by the evening mist. Since that day, Hermunder has never encountered the Huldufolk again, or whatever they were. And while the world sees him as an ordinary man, Hermunder carries a quiet solitude. Few understand what it's like to live between two realities, to have touched the hidden fabric of the world. And perhaps, somewhere behind a stone mound or beneath a fading sunset, the bell may one day chime again. The Stone That Spoke. Iceland is home to a unique elf school in Reykjavik. The school offers both engaging storytelling and a concise lecture about Icelandic folklore and history. From these fascinating archives comes a mysterious case from 1937 about young Lara and her unsettling encounter. This story begins in the quiet expanse of Bardastrand, where the sea winds twist through grassy fields and craggy hills. Amidst this rugged landscape stood an old farm surrounded by scattered rocks and boulders. Among these stones was one larger and more peculiar than the rest. It sat at the edge of a meadow, towering above the others, weathered by centuries of storms. The locals, though aware of it, gave it little thought. But one summer afternoon in 1937, something happened that would etch that rock into the memories of those who lived there. Little Lara, a spirited young girl, was playing near the boulder while her older brother Adelstein and other village children roamed nearby. Feeling adventurous, she scrambled up the side of the stone, its surface warm beneath her feet from the afternoon sun. Standing on top, she skipped and danced, basking in the freedom of childhood. Then, without warning, a sharp, commanding voice pierced the air, coming from directly beneath her feet. "If you do not come down from the rock at once, you will be punished." The voice was unmistakably that of a woman, stern, forceful, and laced with anger. It vibrated up through the rock and into Lara's body, freezing her in place. Terror gripped her small frame as her heart pounded wildly. Without thinking, she leapt from the stone and ran, stumbling through the field all the way back to the farmhouse. Adelstein and the other children rushed to her side, startled by her pale face and trembling hands. But none of them had heard the voice. None had seen anyone near the rock. Shaken, Lara told them what had happened, the voice from beneath the stone, the chilling warning. The other children swore they hadn't played any trick. In fact, not a single adult had been anywhere near the meadow. As a closing note to Lara's story, the locals often spoke of another rock nearby, known as the Dwarf. This strange, house-shaped stone was said to be home to elves and fairies. Out of deep respect, and perhaps fear, the village children never dared to climb it or make noise around it. Rumors told of lights flickering from the rock at night, reinforcing the belief that unseen beings watched from within. Like the rock Lara encountered, it became a quiet reminder to tread carefully in a land where the hidden people might still dwell. The Watchers of the Moss-Covered Stone. This tale is based on an eyewitness account featured in Huldufolk. The Hidden People, a 2015 documentary made by students from the BA production program. In the interview, the witness becomes visibly emotional as he recalls a childhood encounter with Iceland's hidden folk, a powerful and personal story of forgiveness. Long ago, in a windswept valley in rural Iceland, there was a boy named Bjark. His home sat on the edge of a landscape shaped by glaciers and time, where stones littered the fields like ancient sentinels. One stone stood closer than the others, resting beside his family's small turf-roofed house. It was large, oddly shaped, and blanketed in thick, soft moss. Bjark, like most children, was curious by nature. He would often wander outside alone, feeling the cold sting of Icelandic air on his cheeks as he explored the land around him. But the stone always drew him back. Its moss was like a velvet carpet, cool beneath his fingers. And so, day after day, he would peel back small pieces of it, watching how the dark rock was slowly revealed beneath. One evening, as twilight settled over the land, his stepfather noticed him at the stone. His voice broke the calm as he shouted from the doorway, "Stop! Leave the moss alone!" Bjark froze as the man stormed toward him, eyes wide with fury. "You'll anger the hidden people," his stepfather hissed. "The elves live in the stones, and you've disrespected them." Bjark, heart pounding, tried to explain that he hadn't meant any harm. But the reprimand stayed with him, filling his young heart with shame and fear. That night, while lying in his small room, the wind outside carried strange sounds, whispers like distant voices in the dark. Then came the dream. Bjark found himself standing in a misty grove beneath a silver-lit sky. Before him stood a woman, tall and serene, dressed in flowing blue robes. Around her waist glinted a golden belt, and her hair shimmered like starlight. She radiated calm, her eyes kind yet powerful. "You are forgiven," she said, her voice echoing softly through the grove. "You meant no harm to us." Bjark stared at her, unable to speak. He felt her presence wrap around him like a protective cloak. The shame he'd felt just hours earlier melted away, replaced by warmth and awe. "Do not carry this burden," she continued. "We have seen your heart." Before he could respond, the dream faded, and Bjark woke to the early glow of dawn, the memory lingering as vividly as if it had just happened. But that was only the beginning. In the days and years that followed, Bjark often sensed something near him, watching, guiding. When he wandered through thick fogs on the hills, he never felt alone. When storms battered the valley and others spoke of lost sheep or damaged homes, Bjark's family remained untouched. Even as a grown man, the sensation persisted, a quiet guardianship like unseen protectors walking just out of sight. He never again touched the moss on the stone, though he often visited it. And on cold, moonlit nights, when the northern lights streaked across the sky, he sometimes imagined he could see faint silhouettes, figures dressed in blue, standing at the edge of the field, watching. Locals came to know him as someone who walked with the unseen, and though Bjark rarely spoke of it, he often thought of the woman in the dream, the blue-clad princess of the elves. To this day, Bjark swears that the hidden folk have remained near him, guarding him like silent angels beneath the moss and stone. According to Icelandic folklore, finding the Huldufolk, the hidden people, is no simple task. They are said to live parallel to our world, invisible to most eyes. Yet, there are ancient beliefs passed down through generations about how one might catch a glimpse of them. One common tale says that the Huldufolk reveal themselves during special times of the year, such as Christmas Eve, Midsummer Night, or during the 13 nights of Yule. On these enchanted nights, if you wander near ancient boulders or lava fields, you may hear faint laughter, singing, or see flickering lights in the distance, the hidden people celebrating within their invisible dwellings. Others say you can spot them by looking through a hole in a special stone, sometimes called an elf stone or alvestian. Peer through it at the right moment, and you might see the Huldufolk where ordinary eyes see only rocks and shadows. But beware, folklore also warns that seeking them too eagerly could draw their ire. The hidden people protect their homes fiercely, and those who disturb sacred stones or disrespect nature might suffer strange misfortunes. In the end, it's not just about seeing them. It's about understanding the quiet bond between people and the land, where every moss-covered stone might conceal a secret, and every whisper of wind could be something more.